All right, so we're just going to be moving down the list and kind of covering what each of these points mean. They are actually already listed in order of precedence, along with brief summary of their purpose, whether there's any debate, and then obviously the type of vote needed to get that motion to pass.
Point of order is basically something that you'll do when you think that your director or your chairperson has made a procedural error. I will remind you guys, we do not do point of personal preference, so if you have one of those, it's better to address it during an unmoderated caucus. You can come up to approach the chair and take care of that then. But for point of order, an example of a time you would use that, say, if you were skipped on the speakers list, if the director or chairperson misspoke when they were saying what a motion was. On top of that, you have appeal the decision of the chair, and this is to challenge the decision of a chair make, and it would usually be made after you've already point of ordered the chair. So you've already gone through that first one, but if you disagree with the decision of the chair, you can challenge that decision. There's no debate, and you would need 2/3 of the body to vote in agreement with you.
So here at SRMUN, we use two different types of suspension of the meetings. We have unmoderated caucus and moderated caucus. So an unmoderated caucus is it's an informal debate. Actually, they both are, but it's a time where you can like go out in the halls or use the rooms to work on your working papers or to discuss the topic order. They are time spent to focus in on whatever it is that you're currently discussing. So it's like not a time to check your Facebook or your Snapchats or whatever else social media you use. So it's a time that's meant to kind of like be able to get work done outside of formal debate. Also, your chair and dais do have the right to kind of curtail what time they will allow. And so it's always nice to keep in consideration like where you are in your schedule when you're making those motions. There is no debate on an unmoderated caucus. You simply vote by a placard vote for a majority. The other type of informal debate that we have is a moderated caucus. So it's still technically informal debate, but it's just a little more structured. So these cannot exceed 20 minutes, and they have to have a very specific topic. So if you were addressing, I don't know, like cybersecurity or something, you couldn't just say, I move for a 20-minute moderated caucus to discuss cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is like a pretty big topic, so that's not like specific enough, but you could bring that down.
Your dais will let you know if it's not specific enough, and they'll ask you to make it more specific. So you'll have a little bit of warning, a little time to change it if that does happen.
Yes, so these do pass by simple majority. When you move for a moderated caucus, you need to not only specify the time you want for the moderated caucus, but how much speakers time that you want. So unlike in an unmoderated caucus, you kind of just like move around and talk to whoever, but in a moderated caucus, it's a little more structured, so the dais will actually move down a speakers list. So if you move for a 10-minute moderated caucus with you'll have to specify a speaker's time, like 30 seconds, 60 seconds, probably no more than 60 seconds. And then at that point, the dais will start to recognize speakers just under that time, and they'll start 2 timers, one that runs for the duration of the moderated caucus and one that times the speeches. Also, if you are the person who moved for the caucus, you can reserve the right to speak first, but you can't reserve the right to speak last.
Next, we have adjournment of the meeting, and this will actually only be used at the very end of the conference to end your whole meeting. You only have to use that once. Then below that, we have adjournment of debate. So for this, it's actually completely ending debate, no vote. You are not addressing any, even if you have 5 draft resolutions on the dais, you are not going to address those at all. You will simply table that topic and move on. And so for that, you will need 2 speaking in favor, 2 against, and then also a 2/3 majority roll call vote. And that roll call vote is actually fairly important because further on down the line, in order to actually be able to untable that topic and readdress that topic, which you can see down there for reconsideration, you actually do have to you need to have been someone who voted in favor of tabling that topic in the first place. So that's why we're gonna have to do a roll call on that. Closure of debate, this is essentially used when you want to move right into voting procedure. So if you've got a ton of people still on the speakers list and you don't feel like exhausting that to get to the voting procedures, then you can just move for a closure of debate. Only 2 speakers against, no speakers for, 2/3 majority, and so that's typically going to be used when everybody is kind of the consensus generally that you want to go ahead and move into voting procedure. Reconsideration, as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about adjournment of debate, that is to untable the topic essentially. And so we're going to reopen a debate on an earlier issue that was addressed. And for that, you'll just need 2 against and a 2/3 majority. And again, in order to be able to actually motion for a reconsideration of a topic, you have to have been someone who voted in favor of tabling it in the first place.
With setting and changing the speaker's time, you can motion to change the speaker's time. A lot of times you'll do this if people aren't using all their speaker time, or if people are being cut off mid-speech and you think people need more time to speak, and you need 2 to speak in favor and 2 to speak against, and that is a majority. And at the beginning of the session, the speaker's time should be set at 60 seconds automatically, so it'll change from that. With closing and reopening the speaker's list, at the beginning of session, your speakers list is already open, so there's no need to open it, and you will not need to motion to open it. But you can close your speakers list. This is actually a really useful tool to move into voting, because when you exhaust your speakers list, you move directly into voting. So if you want to, still hear a couple more people out, but you want to move towards voting on your draft resolutions, that's what you would use closing the speakers list for. And then after you voted on that, and once you move on to your next topic, usually that's when you'll reopen your speakers list and it'll start over again. Adoption of the agenda is one of the first motions outside of unmoderated and moderated caucuses that you'll make in the body. And so adoption of the agenda, basically it's just no debate. You need a majority. You can set it to 1-2, 2-1, and once you voted on that, if it fails, you'll automatically move into the opposite. So say that you motioned to set the agenda to 1-2, and that fails, then it's automatically set to 2-1. If you're in an open agenda committee like Security Council, there's a little bit less constraint, so that will continue on. It won't automatically be set until the majority of the body agrees on a topic to discuss.
When in voting procedure, there are only 5 motions that you can make. So the first one is point of order. That's just to correct an error in procedure. Say if someone misspeaks or something, that does not require any debate and no vote on it. The second is to appeal the decision of the chair, which is basically challenging a decision of the chair. There's no debate needed for this, but it is a 2/3 majority of the body to actually overturn. The third is division of the question, which is to vote on certain sections of a draft resolution separately. This is typically used to highlight a certain part of a resolution if you think it's strong enough to stand on its own. During the division of the question, you'll have a 1 vote to decide if it should be divided, and we'll have 2 speakers for and 2 people against dividing out that part of the resolution. And if that passes, then that would become an annex, and then we would have a second vote to decide whether to keep that annex in the resolution. If that passes, it will become an annex. If it does not pass, it is completely erased from the resolution. The fourth is adopt by acclamation. This would just be a simple motion to say South Africa motions to adopt this resolution by acclamation. We will accept that, and we will see if there's any dissent. If there are any placards raised against this, then then it is not adopted by acclamation. We will not go into that. And then finally, as a roll call vote, if you would like a resolution to be voted on by roll call, then you can certainly make a motion for that. There's no vote to decide to go into a roll call. You would just want the resolution to be voted on by roll call. So we would go through all the countries alphabetically, and you can vote to yes, pass the resolution, vote down the resolution, or to abstain. You can pass once, and then we'll go back around, and then you must vote yes or no. You cannot abstain after a pass.